Mina, are you with us? Mina seems to have vanished. Apparently so. I think Wi-Fi has failed us today. Let's see if he's back in a few seconds.
I think
And
Mina
if
was not
not,
co-host, so Andrea, Mina was not co-host, so probably he's not able to unmute. So can you please make him co-host?
he was. We talked before, right? Let's see.
Yes.
Yeah, Mina.
Yeah,
I think,
finally.
Oh, okay. Your rights were taken away. I'm sorry. Good.
That's fine.
So
Apologies.
we're good now. Okay. So I'm sharing the screen.
Perfect. Yeah. So before we get into the, yeah, thank you, Andrea. So before we get into the real meat of the quick start that is developed by UiPath, I just want to give a quick 2-minute introduction on what is AWS Quick Starts and why do we use it. So think of AWS Quick Starts as deployment accelerators. This helps you to deploy key workloads into AWS cloud quickly and very easily. Essentially, Quick Starts have 2 key components. One is the reference architecture, which comes with automation. So whatever gets the reference architecture describes how a key workload is deployed onto the AWS cloud. The reference architecture also follows AWS best practices of security and availability and the entire well-architected review framework. From an automation perspective, the CloudFormation templates helps you automate the entire workload onto AWS. So by using Quick Starts, you can launch your workloads directly into your AWS accounts. So one of the prerequisites here is for you to have your AWS account enabled. With Quick Starts, there is also a detailed deployment guide that comes with it. And when Andre shows his Orchestrator Quick Start, we will show you the deployment guide as well. This has detailed descriptions on the reference architecture, the different parameter settings that you need to think about while running this Quick Start to deploy it onto your AWS account. Let's go to the next slide. So in summary, right? So Quick Start saves a whole lot of time. So whole lot using deployment automation. It's going to prevent you from manual errors. So you build it once and deploy it consistently across multiple AWS accounts and VPCs. It's customizable and configurable, which means that depending upon the size of your workload, you could customize the sizing on the EC2 instances and whatnot while you run your quick starts. So with Quick Starts, you can deploy it in minutes. So no longer you'll have to figure out what to do. All the AWS well-architected framework components like security and availability are inbuilt into it. So there is good amount of confidence when you deploy the Quick Starts into your VPC. Best of all, it's free for use. So there isn't any cost associated with using the Quick Start, but the components that gets installed through Quick Starts will obviously have some bearing on cost. Next slide. So if you have to do any kind of deep dive into Quick Starts, there is a whole lot of material and documentation that is available and free for use. So one thing that I would obviously recommend you to look at is the Git repository, which is the third link in this page. So that helps you understand some of the best practices that has been outlined, and you can clone the Git repository and try it on your VPCs. There are a bunch of Quick Starts from different partners and things that were done by AWS solutions architects that are available in this Git repository for use. The Quick Starts that are published by the partners are usually developed by the partners. So I'm now going to hand it over to Andre, who is going to run through the Quick Start guide and a demo for the UiPath Orchestrator. Andre, over to you.
Hey, good evening, everyone, or good morning, depending where you are in the world. I am Andrei Bible. I'm a software engineer at UiPath, and I've been involved with the creation of the Quick Start since its inception. I will try to share my screen now. Let's see how it goes. Hopefully, oh, I live in Melbourne, Australia, and Melbourne, Australia is world renowned for the quality of the internet. And so if usually there are some delays from the moment I share my screen till the moment the information reaches you. So if you see me talking about something, just raise your hand or put it in the chat. Somebody will alert me that I need to stop and let everybody catch up. So we'll be talking today about the AWS Quick Start for the UiPath Orchestrator. UiPath Orchestrator is a server-side product, so it requires it is installed on a Windows server, and it requires well, it's quite an involved process. Let's just say like that. If we have a look at the desired state of what we will be deploying, we'll see that there are a lot of items that need to be both configured, provisioned, configured, and everything has to work in unison. Obviously, being a server-side product, you'd want for it to be scalable. You want for it to be self-healing, let's say. You want it to be easily configurable, and you want it to be secure. So at the end, the Quick Start will deploy in multiple availability zones, some servers. It's going to deploy the high availability add-on. It's going to deploy a database, which is as a service. So we don't actually manage the database ourselves. We let that, we leave this job to AWS to do. And on the front end, obviously, we're going to have an application load balancer, which is going to have the certificate attached to it. So we're going to have TLS. And we're also going to have on the right-hand side here a few S3 buckets, a few roles to make sure that everything just ties up together. The entry point into our journey is going to be the AWS Quick Start, which is going to be on the screen momentarily, where we have the diagram of what we want to deploy and also a deployment entry point. If you've been using CloudFormation before, CloudFormation is a desired state engine. So we declare what resources we want to deploy, and we present it to the CloudFormation engine, which makes all the API calls for us and makes sure that everything is provisioned and healthy at the end. We have decided to use YAML. CloudFormation accepts both YAML and JSON. And Mina was talking about the fact that the code base can be found on GitHub. So we can either use the GitHub, the GitHub repository, which is public, which you can clone and have it on your machine, make any alterations that you want, and deploy it from there, as well as if you are not inclined, or maybe you want to just have a quick go at it, you can use the entry point, which is presented here on the AWS Quick Start page. So if you want to deploy into a new VPC, we just click on this link. We are redirected to the AWS console, which is, I'm already logged in, and the Amazon S3 URL where this template or the main entry point into our template resides. If we click next, we will be presented with the parameters that we need to provide for a successful deployment. There are only a couple of prerequisites, meaning that we do need to have a Route 53 hosted zone already into our account, and we need to provide a fully qualified domain name where the orchestrator will be answering. This is the only prerequisites, other than the fact that obviously we need to have AWS account and a zone which is enabled. So most of the parameters have some pretty good defaults, so we don't have to worry about them. We, for example, have to choose how many availability zones we want to make the deployment in. So we're going to choose 3 for this particular example. And I'm going to just skip over most of the parameters. Some of them have are drop boxes, so it's pretty easy to just pick and choose what you want. Some of them are a little bit more involved, so we actually have to choose a name here. Let's say that is going to be events.uipath marketplace.net. And some of them are actually going to require us to do something. For example, the high availability add-on password is, we actually have to write this one in, as well as the username for the high availability. Other configuration parameters like the RDS database have pretty good or stable default values that you can pretty much rely on. We're going to have the Orchestrator version, which right now is 20.10.7. The UiPath Orchestrator instances are the number of nodes in the beginning that we're going to deploy, because as we said, this is going to be a highly available deployment. So there's going to be more than one node serving requests behind the load balancer. And just a couple of more items like this one. And going next, there are a few other options that we need to, a few other configurations that we need to provide. It's going to be a review. And here, probably once we click on create stack, we will have some validations which will fail. For example, we didn't provide the RDS DB database. We're not going to go through all the process. Once everything is in place and we start the deployment, usually, and this, you can take this with a grain of salt, but usually it's going to take around 45 minutes to an hour until you have an actually working, fully fledged orchestrated deployment in our AWS account. Fortunately, I already have one, because we're not going to wait for 45 minutes. I will find it. There you go. Found it. Okay, so let's presume that we're going to skip over 45 minutes. And at the end, we have a complete deployment. I'm right now in my AWS console on the CloudFormation service. And because of the fact that we are deploying a lot of resources here, we are not going to put everything in one huge, ginormous YAML file. So we're going to split up the resources, and we're going to use what is called as nested stacks. So the main entry point is just going to deploy the network stack, for example, and what we call the orchestrator stack. And the orchestrator stack will further be broken up into some sub stacks. So we're going to have the database, which is going to handle database as well as security groups. We're going to have the high availability stack. Routing, for example, takes care of the load balancer and the target groups. And the server stack itself will contain the actual instances, the actual EC2 instances where the orchestrator is installed. So actually, we should see the front end and make sure that everything works, because so I've went into the parameters file, and I've copied the front end, the full qualified domain name. AWS-vents was supposed to be an AWS -events. Unfortunately, today, the demo gods were not with me. So it is what it is. We'll skip over that. And we'll see the fact that, well, our deployment works. This is how it looks on the front end. And in the back end, we see all the resources presented here. Something very interesting or nice to have once we have deployed it is the fact that AWS allows us to configure it post-deployment, or at least make some configurations post-deployment. We have to remember that we have EC2 instances behind everything else, right? So if I'm going to be looking here, so I'm going to navigate to the auto-scaling group, which is an engine underneath which we have EC2 instances. We have VMs, and we have a desired capacity, which is 2 right now, and we have a minimum capacity of 2, maximum capacity of 20, and we have some rules. Automatic scaling will handle, will increase or decrease the number of instances which service requests, which is great. But then we have to remember the fact that we have EC2 instances. So any configuration that you want to have, you have to RDP onto that machine. You have to find the correct files and the configuration YAMLs or JSONs. You have to alter them. And if you have 20 of them serving traffic in production, maybe you don't have the time, or even if you have the time, you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be doing any kind of minor work like that. So we have thought about this, and we have made the configuration file available in a configuration bucket. So if I look here and I navigate to an S3 bucket, we're going to find a configuration there, which is, well, allows us to modify it. And I'm going to have here a lot of the items that configure my deployment. Don't worry about it. Everything will be deleted. So even if you copy the encryption key, it's not going to be there in about half an hour. But the idea is that if we want to make alterations, if we want to add, for example, a target, an analog target, or stuff like that, we can modify this JSON file, and then we navigate back to our auto-scaling group. Let's see where I found it, where I put it. Oh, there we go. And just hit instance refresh. Instance refresh is going to perform a rolling update of all the VMs. So it's going to drain the existing VMs. It's going to create new instances. And the new instances are going to self-configure based on the configuration file found in the S3 bucket, which we've just modified. So we can perform rolling updates. Don't do that in production, first of all. Make some tests before. It's quite easy to deploy this. Again, takes around 45 minutes, provide some input arguments. But after that, you can play around and understand how many of the configuration you can perform, how much of the configuration you can perform using this configuration mechanism, the config.json found in the S3 bucket. Another item which was a pain in the past was the fact that usually it was quite difficult to debug stuff. So again, you have EC2 instances, you have to RDP onto them if you want to gather any kind of information. So we are extracting using the CloudWatch agent, we are extracting the logs. And we can actually see them now in the CloudWatch console. Let's say that AWS EC2, and this is the name of the instance that is running Orchestrator. And we have all the logs extracted here, easier to access. Some of the logs are, for example, the application logs, the event viewer logs, sorry, which are Windows events. And well, they're not in the best format, obviously that in XML format, but we can view them as text. We can download them. We can put them in any event viewer software to make it easier to debug. It's going to be very helpful should you have any kind of quirkiness in your deployment. And other logs that you will find here are the installation logs for the orchestrator and some other stuff that it may be useful as you actually use the deployment app or install it. Okay. Now, presuming that you want to not have to go through the console every time, let's say that we don't want to go through the console and put in all the parameters every time we deploy, AWS provides us with the ability to use command lines to create stacks. So if you have the AWS CLI installed, like I have, it's very simple. We just need to create a JSON file with the input parameters, and then AWS creates stack with a stack name. I actually have an input file, if I remember correctly, which I've used a little bit earlier, and which kind of looks like this. So for each of the parameter keys that we have in the main entry point, the template, we need to provide a value. This JSON format can be found on the AWS website. I don't think I have any of the, I don't think I have the tab open, but it's very easy to find. It's a specific JSON format. It's a specific JSON schema, the parameter key and value, and there are around 20 parameters which actually require some kind of input. And once this is done, you can use something like a terminal, for example, and this will do AWS cloud formation, create minus stack, stack name, and so on. This is events and template URL. I will not go through the whole of the exercise, but this will provide consistent, predictable outcomes. We have, during testing, we have deployed probably in excess of 1,000 Orchestrator instances, or 1,000 deployments to validate the quick start we are presenting right now. And we're pretty confident overall on its stability. Every now and again, we do have some issues, but there is a great mechanism for you to use, which is the GitHub issues. It's very easy and would actually, it would help us and the community tremendously if you could open issues and provide us with feedback regarding what works, what doesn't work. It would help us to understand better what kind of features we should add next, what kind of features are most interesting to you, because everybody has some kind of restrictions. I mean, we sometimes sleep, so we need to prioritize. So the more you speak to us and the more information you provide, the better we can make the quick start, and the more features we can add, or the correct features, not necessarily the more the merrier, but the correct features that actually interest you. And well, this is about 20 minutes, which was the target for this. Let me know if there are questions. Andrea or Mino, I haven't really watched the chat. Let me know if there are questions, please.
I haven't seen any questions in the chat.
Okay. Mino, you have questions for me? You always have questions for me. Andre, what was the error rate for those 1,000 deployments? Well, I don't have a statistics. Recently, the deployment has been very stable. We use a tool called Taskcat. Mino actually had it on the slides a little bit earlier, which takes in some types of parameters, a matrix, right? You can't test everything, and there is a matrix that you need to we focus on. And if I will navigate, hopefully I get there soon enough. Let's see. It looks like this. It's going to be on the screen momentarily. And right, so an input parameter might be something like this. Deploy in US West 1 and 2 availability zones, this Orchestrator version, and also put in an Orchestrator license. Or let's say I want to validate the fact that it works properly on 3 availability zones on US East 1, and so on. So Taskcat does the heavy lifting for us and performs this deployment in parallel across all these regions. As you can see, we also deploy multiple orchestrators in the same region, just to make sure that everything works in order and there are no overlaps, or that there is nothing hard-coded in our code which can create a clash. And recently, we haven't had any. We've had a very good mean time between defects. Is there any plan for an on-prem quick start deployment also? On-prem, well, we rely heavily on the fact that AWS provides us with a desired state infrastructure capability in the form of CloudFormation. So most of the work that we do actually is setting up this quite complex diagram that we have here. Let me see if I can find it. There we go. This quite complex diagram that's going to be on the screen momentarily. Come on, internet. There you go. So there are a lot of moving parts here, and we need to provision it. We need to configure it, and we need a stable API for this. So it doesn't really, we don't really have an engine for us to provide this kind of deployment for any on-premise for an on-premise. Let's see what else we have. Okay. And one more thing, and I think that would be it. Let's presume, I think Mina came up with this question. Let's presume that we have created this deployment and we figured out the fact that, well, it doesn't really work the way we wanted it to work. What we can do is, from a command line, run AWS CloudFormation update stack with new parameters, or from the console, we can navigate to the stack. CloudFormation calls these bundled resources together. They call them stacks, right? And we navigate there. We click on update. We use the current template. Let's presume that we don't want to make alterations to the template, even though we can replace it as well. But let's presume that we use the current template and we just modify something. Let's say that we want to modify the instance type. Maybe we think that M4 extra large is not the instance type we wanted, and we want to switch to an M4 2 extra large, which is just fine. We can do that in the console. We're going to click next, next, next a few times. And we're going to acknowledge and agree. And the update stack button is going to trigger an update, which is going to be handled completely by CloudFormation. So CloudFormation is going to look at all the resources which are affected by that parameter. In our case, it's going to be obviously the orchestrator as well as a Bastion host. And it's going to update the size of the VM. This is going to take a little bit of time. And at the end, we're going to have the new configuration still working, brand new VMs, which is good. And I have done this a couple of times in the preparation for this call. Actually, was a little bit nervous about it because I didn't know if it's going to work. Hopefully, thankfully, it did. That was obviously great news. And we can see the results here in the instance refresh at the end. I actually changed the instance type twice just to make sure that everything worked out well.
Andre, I got a couple of questions.
Yes.
I mean, you showed us installing this on a new VPC. So if I have an existing VPC, can they still work?
Yeah. Sorry, all questions at once or one by one? Question, answer, question, answer.
Question, answer, question, answer.
Question, answer, question, answer. Okay. We looked at the main entry point, which was deploying to a new VPC, but you can also deploy to an existing VPC. Obviously, we don't want to waste resources. And there is another entry point to the deployment journey, or the user journey. And this one will ask us for existing VPCs. So on the same web page, the Quick Start, AWS Quick Start page, I just clicked on the second link there. And here, I will be able to choose existing subnets in my account, in my region, so that I don't have to deploy everything from scratch. Or if I want to reuse, for example, let's say I have UiPath Orchestrator, and you say, well, I also want to add UiPath Test Manager. That's a good idea, right? Let's put them all in the same VPC. So it's just a matter of using a different entry point into the installation journey. We routinely test this scenario as well, and we haven't had any issues.
So in terms of cost, I know it truly depends on the type of instances and the rest of the configurations that get selected. But is there a rough estimate on a proof of concept or a test deployment that you have done in the past?
Unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to answer this, mainly because I am just, I actually don't have access to billing, to be honest to you. So I have no access to billing to this account. Billing is not way above me. And I have not been tasked with offering an answer to this question. But if we can take this offline, I'd be more than happy to provide an answer within this week. No.
And there is one question on the chat window, which, is there a CDK version to this Quick Start?
Well, it's not clear to me what you mean when you say a CDK version. The code is public. So you are free to clone this repository and reuse it as you see fit. Obviously, it would help the community if you do good work with it to push back into the upstream and create a pull request for the AWS community to use. We are actually thinking, for example, in using this template. In using this, sorry, someone is drawing on my screen and it caught my attention. So we're thinking about using this template to add some functionality, such as, for example, what if you want to have Task Manager and Action Center and Task Mining bundled together and have something like a, pick and choose. You deploy one big VPC, and then you pick, let's say, the UiPath Orchestrator and the Task Manager, and you have them all work together. That would be as close to a CDK that I would think of.
Yeah, I strongly recommend that you look at the deployment guide. Andrew, if you could open up the deployment guide, that will help folks understand the amount of details that goes into the deployment guide and gives you the level of confidence in which that you can basically execute one step at a time on the deployment guide.
Yeah, absolutely. I've clicked on the link. The deployment guide is quite long. There's been a very involved process with the AWS Quick Start team, and we have provided a lot of answers to a lot of questions. I can tell you that much. So we think that this partnership has been quite thorough, much more thorough than we had expected, actually. And we are very happy to have gone through this process of putting together the guide as well as all the information required. And overall, we think that we're pretty happy with it. Let's just say it like that. And if there are no more questions, I'm going to stop my share and we can move on to the next Andrei of the evening or morning, depending on where you are in the world.
Yep. Thank you, Andrei. Thanks for the introduction. Great presentation. Let me share my screen first. All right. Hi everyone, my name is Andrei Oros. I'm product manager at UiPath, and I'm the main driver behind our UiPath IT automation product vertical. Today I'm going to show you the cool integrations that we've added into our platform that enable you to integrate in your RPA processes, Amazon Web Services, steps, tasks. So why have we been adding this type of integrations into our platform? Well, because with digital transformation, IT no longer plays just a functional support layer in organizations. It is integrated in all areas of a business process. Yeah, because of this, in order to have an efficient organization, in order to have efficient processes, you will have to also perform IT tasks, steps related to IT. And that will directly impact the bottom line. So as mentioned, we are now able to address use cases from all over the IT ecosystem, from provisioning of user accounts, mailboxes, assigning application licenses, automating applications, of course, but also managing AWS resources. And when I say AWS resources, I'm talking about Workspaces, instances, S3, the most common requests for our RPA business processes related to AWS. As you can see from this integrations landscape, yeah, as a foundation, we have the integrations, which are built on top of SDK. So the IT automation activities are actually background running. And they are communicating with the environments that we're automating via basically API requests. What have we created for AWS? Well, we've leveraged the official SDKs from AWS to build the activities that you see on the right, which enable a lot of cool use cases for us. The integrations that we've created are available for free on the official feed. So all you have to do in order to add them to your project is go to Studio, manage packages, go to the official feed, and search for Amazon. And you have here Amazon Web Services and Workspaces, what I'm going to show you today. It's as easy as that. And again, since they're on the official feed, that means that they're a long-term investment from our side. So we will be maintaining them. You have translations for them, in-depth documentation. So yeah, they're really safe to use long-term. Also, we're trying to make your life really easy when building RPA processes that involve AWS IT tasks. So everything is drag and drop, easy to understand. We're talking about configuration over development. All right. Regarding the demos that I'm going to show you today, I've selected 3 use cases that I find pretty cool. A very common one is employee onboarding. Then we have very specific to not UiPath, I would say, but to RPA in general, the demand to auto-scale RPA robots as a function of workload. So yeah, only have robots running when you have something for them to process, right? And then, of course, for those familiar with our product portfolio, testing automation. How can we apply AWS IT automation for our test suite? Okay, let's jump right in. As part of an employee onboarding process, in general, you will have these main categories. You will want to provision a user account, set a password, create a mailbox, assign the user to certain departments, roles, groups, and add application licenses. And all that is possible in UiPath platform with our IT automation activities. We have AD activities, Exchange server for mailboxes. So you can do all that. And we were missing the VDI part. And we've added AWS Workspaces activities. So now, as part of an onboarding process, you can create everything related to the onboarding of a user. Yeah, it's not limited to what I'm showing here. These are the main areas. The activities that we've built, as I said, they're official, available for free on the official feed. Here you have the documentation. So really in-depth documentation. We also have an example, a detailed one. So it's really easy to get started with this type of workflow. And I would like to also show you a demo on this topic. So I have here my workspaces, and I have a test user for which I would like to create a workspace, right? A VDI as part of yeah, let's say onboarding, right? Let's assume that I did all the previous steps. Now I have the user, and I want a workspace for this user. How does the workflow look like? A workflow that performs this? Well, it's as easy as drag and drop. You have an Amazon Workspaces scope activity. You only need either access key or IAM role. It works with both. And then workspace activity. And this takes as an input the bundle ID, Active Directory ID, the username, yeah, computer type. So everything is configuration, and yeah, we try to make life really easy for you when configuring these activities. And we give as an output the workspace object itself. And in that object, you have a ton of information. I'm going to show you shortly what you can do with it. Besides creating the workspace itself, I also want to add tags to it. So I will be adding creator, purpose, owner tags with my email address and purpose demo. And yeah, that's it. Let's see Tron. Execution started. I'm not going to wait for so wait for completion is set to false. I'm not going to wait for the completion of the workspace. That takes more than 10 minutes. So it will run in the background. If I wanted to perform additional steps on the workspace, for instance, add the tags after it is created with our update workspace activity, I am able to do that, but I would have to set wait for completion set to true. Okay. And let's see what's happening here. Yeah. So my workspace is now pending. This is the registration code. So when it is ready, I will be able to connect to it with the Amazon Workspaces client with my user credentials. So it is as easy as that. So really powerful, simple to use, drag and drop. And yeah, what else can you do with these activities? Well, quite a lot. So besides the provisioning part, of course, you have the maintenance side of things. So you can also stop the workspace. You can perform migration to another bundle. You can update it, start, stop, restore, remove for offboarding, getting information about the workspace, iterate for each workspace. And in this manage workspaces workflow, we're doing just that. So for each workspace, I'm looking if it is in an unhealthy state. So I have my workspace object. Yeah, and you can access different properties, bundle ID, computer name, state, etc. And yeah, you can find out if the state is unhealthy, for instance, and if you choose to do so, you can reboot it, right? Then yeah, if it's set to running node auto stop and the user is disconnected for I don't know how long, you could stop it. Then you also have maybe cost optimization where you would like to see if a workspace is inactive. You could do that by leveraging tags. You can remove the workspace if it is not in use, if it's not used. Yeah, so there aren't that many activities, but as you can see, they're quite powerful. So what you can accomplish with them is quite powerful. All right. Moving on, RPA robots autoscaling on AWS. So yeah, when you have robots deployed, right, you don't want to always have those robots running unless you have work for them. And in this case, it would bring a lot of value to your RPA deployment from an efficiency point of view if it would be able to automatically respond to changes in workload. So when you have work for the robots, then you power on the EC2 instances where those robots are running. When you don't have work anymore for those robots, the jobs are completed. Then for the EC2 instances to stop automatically. So this is a sort of load balancing, but not in the traditional sense of APIs or adding more servers, stuff like that. No, it's from an RPA business side of things. So you have here a business rule which resides in our orchestrator. The pending jobs, how many pending jobs do I have? It's in information in our orchestrator. Additional configuration about the auto-scaling strategy in our database. So auto-scaling at this level requires some additional capability which can be easily be automated in our workflow. So you literally have a robot auto-scaling other robots, which I also find pretty cool. So let's see that in action. So I have my workflow solution. It is deployed in robot auto-scaling admin. So I have my two processes here, but the one that we'll be discussing about is process client. So this is the workflow that the robot will be running. And this is the workflow that when executed, auto-scales other robots. All right. So we can see that I have two filters, reset to default. So when I have incoming job events, the solution reacts to those job events and then starts my process client RAS job. Where do these events come from? Well, they can come from any orchestrator installed, whatever you prefer. And basically me creating workload here will trigger the auto scaling. Now, as you can see in this folder, I don't have any active robots, right? So all the robots are stopped. The EC2 instances associated with those robots are these three. And as you can see, they are currently stopped. So what I'm going to do is create some work. So for that, I have to go to automations. I have my fake work process. This is basically just a delay of 1.5 minutes. I can say explicitly on which robots I want this workflow these jobs to run, or I could say allocate dynamically. Now, what happens is the jobs in my managed folder are pending, right? They're not running because I don't have any robots for them. What the auto-scaling solution will do is it will, see it's already working on it. It will process the state of my folder, RAS admin, see how many pending jobs I have, how many connected robots, disconnected robots I have, and then it will decide if it has to start instances in AWS. And as you can see, one of them is already pending. Yeah, all three are pending. So it has decided to start all three instances for me. And if we look in the workflow log, because again, it's a robot running automation behind the scenes, you can see in the log that it's getting the credentials for connecting to AWS and then starting the VMs and done processing folder. And previously you see the other, in the previous logs page, you see the other steps of the workflow, getting the state, how many pending jobs, how many start events, how many machines are disconnected, how many of them are busy. So everything that you have to take into account when performing auto scaling. And what will happen now? Well, when these VMs will boot, the robots will become active. They will perform they will complete the work. Afterwards, auto-scaling kicks in again, and it will stop for me the instances. Okay. And yeah, this is how it looks behind the scenes. This is how the solution works behind the scenes. So you have the managed orchestrators to the right. They are basically the source of workload of job events. Those events trigger the auto-scaling process. As part of the auto-scaling process, I'm looking on the left, you see a database in which I have rules. So for folder RAS AWS, right, I want 10 robots always running, 100 running only when there is workload for them. I can also configure this at the environment level for classic folders. So really, really powerful. And again, this is auto-scaling, but from a business side of things, you have here rules that are outside of the scope of infrastructure. The rules for auto-scaling in this case come from our orchestrator and from something that you set up in a database. And how does it look like? Well, the trigger for starting or stopping VMs is associated with job spending. If I no longer have any jobs to be executed, then I go ahead and deallocate VMs. Then I basically stop the EC2 instances. For that, again, I'm connecting with access key. I'm getting my instances list. I'm also performing a check on the state of the VMs, because maybe these VMs are reported in our orchestrator. Yeah, these are disconnected, but maybe they're already booting or something, right? So maybe the VMs are already running, and I don't want to apply a start instance if the VM is already running. So you have the possibility to do this type of checks as well. The EC2 instance object that we expose for the workflow development contains this type of properties like state and if it's running or not. And only if it's not running, I'm going to start it. Case stop, it's again the same. And all I have to input for this activity is the instance object, which I get from the previously executed get instances list. Here you can specify the state. If I only wanted the running or stopping or whatever, I could configure that here. And it's as easy as that. Everything else that you see is a boilerplate related to the business rules side of things. So again, really, really powerful, a robot auto-scaling other robots on AWS based on some business rules that you can customize in a workflow. The database state is, again, a simple workflow, just a few queries. So everything configurable in a workflow. Easy to customize, easy to understand. All right. Let's move on to testing automation. So for those familiar with our product portfolio, we have test suite. Test suite allows you to perform testing automation for your apps, and it integrates very nicely with DevOps pipelines. Where does IT automation for AWS kick in this use case? Well, in the preparation phase. So for you, in order to run a test, perhaps you want to do some configuration on the environment. Perhaps you want to do some rebuilding of the app from the latest sources. Perhaps you want to provision the entire server with the app with some custom actions directly in our UiPath that suit workflows. Well, our AWS activities enable you to do just that. Here to the left, you see how simple a workflow that deploys an app inside the new. Actually, this here is in an existing EC2 instance is. So you get the instance by its ID, and then you run a PowerShell command inside it, and that command installs for you the application. And you can also do RPA robots deployment. And we can take things even further. So yeah, in a pipeline, you start from the source code. Step one, you have a commit, right, with new unit tests, new code. As part of the pipeline, you're running at step 3 the workflow that deploys for you what's needed for the UiPath test cases to run. Then you end up with a ton of test cases, right? And yeah, the robots are stopped because you want to have an efficient RPA deployment. Auto scaling kicks in, starts the robots at step 5. It runs all the test cases in our orchestrator, and then auto scaling kicks in and deallocates the test automation robots. So yeah, this is how it looks high level. And I would like to show you how this type of workflow is built. So let's say I wanted to extend my RPA deployment with additional robots in running on AWS EC2. I can create my instance with the create instance activity. Yeah, you can configure the instance type, from which image you want to create this instance. You have the possibility to set user data, to change the computer name perhaps. So everything that you might need to configure in order to deploy a new EC2 instance for running a UiPath RPA robot, right? We're giving a bit of time for the instance to initialize, and afterwards we have a already built activity available also in the AWS spec that configures UiPath robot. What that does, it connects it to our orchestrator. So you have the instance, you either create it or you get an existing one. You have to specify machine key, orchestrator URL, or directly the connection string. And this activity will connect for you the robot in the orchestrator. It does everything end-to-end for you, which is pretty cool. If you wanted to do the application deployment that I talked about in my slide, again, you would get the instance by ID. And then, yeah, the script for deploying the app can vary. This is just a sample, a PowerShell script that gets the latest sources from GitHub of a web application built with JavaScript, expands the zip to a specified folder, and then performs a build locally, and also runs the server so that the test cases can execute against the new server. And yeah, I'm not going to deploy a new app or connect a robot. I'm just going to show you the create instance part, because that runs quite fast. So for that, I will be clearing the filter. And let's run the workflow. So it should be creating for me a UiPath demo instance. All right, let's see. Let's refresh. And here you have it. So UiPath demo is now pending. And yeah, from the auto scaling side of things, you see that the instances that were started to take on the pending jobs are now stopped because auto scaling decided to stop them. So yeah, this will be pending, and this will be building behind the scenes. So yeah, as easy as that. So really powerful integration together with our test suite for this type of test automation use cases, and yeah, not only. Let's see if the workspace deployment is ready. Yep, it's now available, so we can see if it has actually worked. Test user 1. Sign in. Oh, I've forgotten my password. All right, so somebody must have changed the password. Well, you're gonna have to trust me that the workspace runs, and yeah, for this user, I am able to connect after I learned the password from my colleagues. Yeah, this type of IT automation capabilities can be applied to a number of use cases, not what I've shown you. So let's take, for instance, cloud migration, right? So you want to take resources from your on-prem data center and move them to AWS. The resources can vary. They can be virtual machines. They can be users, file shares. So the integrations that we have in the UiPath platform can help you at all these steps. So yeah, virtual machine migration. Let's say that you're doing the migration from VMware, right? So in the VMware activity pack, we have an activity to export the VM to OVM, to open virtualization format. And then we have an activity that allows you to import in AWS that OVF into the cloud. What you're seeing here are workflow templates that are available for free in our GitHub public repository. So you can go ahead and download them, try them out. They're free to download, to use, to edit. These are here to make your life easy while you get started, and we offer hundreds of templates that are pre-built and perform out of the box a ton of cool operations. The same workflows are also available on our UiPath marketplace, and we also have playlist, an official playlist on YouTube with a ton of demos. This here is for the workspaces, and it takes you step by step. Yeah, I've stopped audio, but there's also a step-by-step explanation of how everything runs. It describes the configuration of the parameters. So yeah, a ton of resources to help you get started, and the documentation is very helpful as well, really detailed. And again, in other end-to-end business cases, such as cloud migration, that includes also uses and data and file shares, etc. With RPA, with the capabilities built into the UiPath platform, we can help at all steps. So the pre-migration operations, performing some cleanups on the virtual machines, exporting them to different formats, yeah, then moving these resources into the cloud, no matter which strategy you prefer, then performing post-migration operations, deleting things maybe on-prem, then afterwards reassigning rights to different users. And we can help at all steps of such a process. This is just an example. And if the built-in activities, official activities are lacking for an exact operation that you're trying to perform, maybe there's a REST API, and AWS has us really well covered on this front, on the API front. You can leverage that from inside our workflows. It's not CLI. Again, really powerful on the AWS side. And let's say that you're lacking any of these three options. Well, you can always use our market-leading UI automation capabilities at the end of the day. So yeah, really powerful, and yeah, I invite you to try them out, to take a look at what we've built, and yeah, I hope you build cool stuff with it. Now, if there are questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
There is one in the chat. Is there any material? I'm not sure if you already mentioned.
There are material to RPA autoscaling. Yes, so the solution that I've shown that performs autoscaling is actually available both on GitHub and also on our UiPath marketplace. So you get the full sources, it's free, it's under MIT license, so you can do whatever you prefer with it. You can customize it. You can say license MIT. You can download it from whichever repository you prefer, our marketplace or the GitHub repo, with documentation, the process packages, the process sources, the database SQL script, everything's in there. If there are other questions.
Andre, I
then,
have a question.
Yeah, please.
Are there, how do you see this in the future in terms of, are there new opportunities that you're looking at IT automation to progress this product roadmap further?
Great question. Thank you. So the next integrations that we're going to add for this space has to do with IAM. So today we're lacking out-of-the-box activities that allow you to manage, to assign accounts to different roles, and we would like to see that into the platform. And going even further. The UiPath platform at the end of the day tries to emulate humans, the person working on different types of tasks. And as mentioned previously, this type of task very often has to do with IT as well. So we will definitely be further evolving the IT automation integrations to also include operations for cybersecurity, where we're seeing a lot of demand in these last months since the pandemic has hit. We will also be adding more activities based on user request, of course, for the S3 for the storage, right? There we have a lot of feedback, and they're used quite a lot in our RPA processes. So yeah, we will definitely be growing more in this space in those lines. All right. Thank you, everyone, for the interest.
Let's see. I allowed everyone to unmute, so I'm not sure if anyone wants to ask anything else. Well, seems like you were very thorough, all of you, in your presentation. Thank you all so much. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Mina and Andre for your presence, for your time and your effort. And thank you for being here with us. For everyone, join our next meetups in the series. The next one is actually a week from now, so check out the site for the other ones. And have a good day and have a good evening, everyone. And thank you.
Thanks again, everyone, for the interest. Bye.
Bye.